Hey, welcome to part 3 of my compilation of every modding short I've made to date. Part 1 was secondaries, part 2 was melee weapons, and now last but not least, it's primaries. These things have a huge degree of variety. Rifles, bows, launchers, snipers, even the entire subcategory of shotguns which have their own unique mods. Primaries also tend to be the best performing weapons in Warframe overall. It is a horde shooter after all, and be it through explosive ordnance, chaining beams, massive projectiles, or sheer force of fire rate, primaries tend to be the best at mulching hordes of baddies. The go-to build for primary weapons tends to be almost the exact same from weapon to weapon, but many weapons fortunately also come bundled with special gimmicks that at least change the way you play with that build, if not the build itself. I don't think it's really possible to have a favorite weapon type in Warframe, where you will always have a primary, secondary, and melee in your loadout at all times, but most of my favorites do happen to be primaries, so there's that. The Cedo is Lavos' signature shotgun, and it's right there with the Asma and Zenistar in the category of weapons that do the killing for you, so naturally it's a favorite of the average Warframe player. Seriously, forget about tactically aiming headshots or focusing on high priority targets. This thing's secondary fire will shoot off a bunch of high status homing discs that bounce around the room a billion times and paint every enemy with a variety of different status effects. Conversely, the primary fire is a pellet spread with no status chance and high crit that also deals more damage for each status on the enemy, making it useful for ending the suffering of anyone unfortunate enough to survive your initial glaive salvo. The mod setup for this gun is incredibly basic, multi-shot and damage, and then crit and status mods with a little fire rate if you care about the quality of life, also some projectile speed in your Exilus slot. If you feel like being able to proc corrosive and every other primary status effect on one trigger pull isn't enough, you can also replace your fire rate mod for more status if you're comfortable firing about as often as I wake up feeling well rested. That's how you mod the Cedo. Bazinga! Hey nerds, it's me, Science Crab, here to wow your vision receptacles with another modding guide. This time, we're tackling a gun with a low barrier to entry. As in, like, no barrier to entry. You can build it for credits as soon as you get into your ship. That's right, baby, it's Braton time. The Braton is classified as an assault rifle, meaning it does assault rifle things, like shoot fast, do a pittance of damage, and let you down when you need it the most. Yeah, it's not going to be a mainstay in your arsenal, considering how early on you can acquire it, and it pales in comparison to its variants. But I can still help you build it to be its best while you have it, before you give it a tearful goodbye and atomize it into credits which you'll use to build attacks on, or something. Being slightly less worse at crit and slash damage than it is at everything else, you'll want to deck out the Braton with damage, multi-shot, some fire rate, and then crit and flat elemental damage mods to round it out where you can, and don't you even think about putting an Orokin Catalyst on this thing. The Proboscis Cernos is the 5th Cernos bow to exist, and also one of the increasing number of Warframe bows that function like grenade launchers. Arrows fired by this weapon will pull in enemies from quite a ways away before exploding. This is a very handy gun for both AoE damage and crowd control, such as pulling enemies into Hydroid's tentacles. Like with its other explosive bow brethren, Proboscis Cernos' ammo reserves are tiny, so you're going to want to pack a reliable secondary and some ammo conversion mods. For other mods, the crit chance on this weapon is comedically low, so you'd be wasting your time modding for crits. So let's build for just status chance and damage. I like viral heat, just like the rest of Warframe players. And this leaves us with 2 extra mod slots, which you can fit with Galvanized Aptitude if you've got it, and maybe Fire Rate or Faction Banes, you nerd. The Gotva Prime is what I like to see in a weapon. Good stats, feels fun to use, and most importantly of all, a fun and effective gimmick. Gotva Prime breaks the trend set by other assault rifles by feeling good to use. It also has a unique passive. Status chances give a 15% chance for your next hit to be a red crit. This passive means that while you can use the same cookie-cutter primary weapon build on this gun, it's not optimal. Instead, we create our own bespoke and unique build by, replacing crit chance with hammer shot. Yes! Yes! Overall, this is a very solid weapon to use, and it can perform at pretty much all levels of play, with your only real discomfort being the absolute number vomit this gun produces. Gotva Prime is acquired by either time traveling back to TennoCon 2019 where it was a Twitch drop reward, or by getting lucky with Borrow and picking it up for approximately $10 bajillion. The astute among you might remember that I did a short about the Cedo before, but that video, like me, has aged incredibly poorly over the last 3 years, and I feel I need to show the community at large that I can still cook. So, what's so special about the Cedo? Well, I mean, more like, what isn't? It's a shotgun whose alt fire releases bouncing projectiles that apply a gorillion status effects, so even though it doesn't deal much raw damage, the procs guarantee basically all trash mobs will be vaporized on the spot. The full auto primary fire has high crit and has a built-in condition overload-like effect, ensuring anything that survives your first button press still isn't long for this world. Building for this weapon is pretty straightforward. You get your crit and galvanized mods, but then since the alt fire status is so high and the primaries is so low, you can forgo dual stat mods entirely for just pure elemental damage. Now of course, this gun is most at home in the hands of Lavos, who synergizes with spreading elemental procs. But I would be amiss to not mention how it scales with additive damage buffs, like Mace's ballistic battery. Now go forth and alchemize some fools. The Hema is Nidus' signature burst-firing rifle that's categorized by having no ammo reserves, and instead sucking the lifeblood directly out of your arm? It's cool though, you get lifesteal on headshots. This weapon is surprisingly decent. It's got great status chance, innate viral damage, and even serviceable crit. This, coupled with its latent sustain, makes it a great single-target weapon. But then it's a single-target weapon in Warframe 2024, making it basically a gimmick valued solely for its lifesteal. As far as modding goes, since you're already going to be aiming for headshots, I decided to go for galvanized crosshairs and primary deadhead. You can mod for corrosive, because corrosive and viral together are always goated, and then you can do hammer shot or thermite rounds depending on how your meridians are aligned that day. Overall, this is a fun, if gimmicky weapon to use, and I would rant about having to farm mutagen samples, but nah, I'm pissed. Nidus Prime released with Strun and Magnus Prime? What? Hema is his signature weapon. It should have been Hema Prime. How to make a good burst rifle. Strap an AoE weapon onto it. That's it. The Battacor is a Corpus sentient hybrid weapon made of resources from the Orb Valis that can be researched in your dojo's Corpus lab. And it breaks the mold by having that's right, two viable builds. Kills with the primary fire fill up a 3-segment charge meter, with the alt fire expending all of the charges to shoot a radial laser with more boom per bar. Great way to clear out a priority target, or an entire extended family's worth of enemies. Battacor also has an augment, and I'm not reading all that. All you need to know is that in exchange for sacrificing the alt fire's AoE explosion, you get infinite punch through, regain charge per enemy hit, and get a crit bonus at full charge. This means as long as you maintain a level of accuracy and positioning, you can retain a max charge, and you can shoot accurately, right? Barrage does give some pretty good improvements, but then again, it also costs a mod slot, so we're gonna have to change things up accordingly. Most notably though, since it removes the AoE burst from the alt fire, you don't need to feel bad about using galvanized aptitude. Basically all that to say, it's like good Opticor. Don't at me. I had to disconnect and reconnect my Twitch and Warframe accounts, but I finally got my hands on the AX-52. This one's a suspiciously familiar looking rifle that you get for free from watching TennoCon 2024. And I mean, if you didn't watch TennoCon 2024, skill diff, honestly. Funnily enough, this is the second crit-based rifle we got from watching TennoCon, the first being the Gotva Prime. So the AX has some serious competition. Most notable is the 2-part passive, giving increased ammo efficiency on hipfire, and plus 400% critical chance on headshots. Good. Although this does mean getting the most out of this gun pigeonholes you into a headshot build, so dust off that premotor cortex, Warframe players. Here's the build I came up with. This last slot can be filled with either shred or hammer shot, depending on your willingness to reload every 2 seconds. And you know what? Sure, this is a single target weapon, but it's a really good single target weapon that rewards accuracy, and the fire rate makes dealing with crowds not nearly as annoying. Overall, really good weapon. But you had better get on getting that copy of Photon Overcharge. This is the Tenet Glaxion, which is different from the normal Glaxion, which is bad, and the Glaxion Vandal, which generates an AoE bubble, or the Verglass, which is just a tiny Glaxion that your Sentinel can hold. This thing's basically a cold version of the Amprex, which chains to multiple enemies, which already earns it points in my book. But its strengths come from it being a sister weapon, so it can have magnetic and cold damage, and it also is compatible with Photon Overcharge, a hybrid utility mod that generates energy orbs when taking down cold-affected enemies. Here's the build I like to rock. Hunter Munitions gets a slash procs despite Glaxion having no innate IPS damage, and using Photon Overcharge alongside Arcane Frostbite means that we don't need to use Vital Sense. The idea of a utility weapon is something that's so heavily underused in Warframe. So to see the Tenet Glaxion be able to pull off insane energy generation while also not skimping on massive room-wide damage is a welcome sight. The Trumna is a very, very large gun. Despite having a glacial 5-second reload, this Entrati-made machine gun has a decent primary fire, with enemy takedowns charging its alt fire. This thing here is the star of the show. It does insane damage in a huge area and bounces between enemies in the environment. You might want to install Cautious Shot on this, but as an alpha gamer myself, I take the concussions where they come. Modding-wise, this weapon builds the exact damn same as every other rifle. Condition Overload doesn't buff the explosion damage on the alt-fire, but I find that it does so much damage that anything that survives your initial salvo will be slim pickings for the primary fire, regardless. Overall, Trumna's a fun weapon. There's probably better options considering how mind-numbing the resource grind for this thing is, but it looks good, feels good to use, and produces an insane amount of Daka, while still being viable at all stages of the game. I'm not really sure whether to make a Kingsman reference or a Splatoon reference here, so just pretend I made whichever one resonates with you the strongest. The Higasa is Komei's signature rifle. It shoots 5-round bursts and deploys an indestructible front-facing shield while aiming. The shield getting damaged and weapon takedowns charge an alt-fire laser that does big damage. This weapon's biggest strength, though, is probably how it can use Higasa Serration, which I feel like is just about able to squeeze galvanized aptitude out of the build due to its crazy damage increase. The secondary effect seems interesting, but it's really just more gambling, as you could either roll a blast proc and delete an entire crowd, or get a single pathetic cold stack. Higasa is a pretty serviceable weapon though. It deals good damage, has fun gimmicks, and again, an indestructible shield is nothing to sneeze at. While it's not going to replace your late game workhorse weapons, it is a great weapon for beginners to pick up. The Steflos is weird. It's weird, and I kinda like it for that. This is Citrine's signature shotgun that fires very aesthetic projectiles that sort of just stop immediately. This is part of the Steflos' unique and very weird mechanic, where upon hitting an enemy, your projectiles gain travel time and size, incentivizing you to line up big groups of enemies. This is fine in practice. I mean, Arcaplasmor does basically the same thing without any of these restrictions. Steflos is still a perfectly serviceable weapon, mind you, just with a bizarre quirk that makes it worse than a similar gun. As far as building goes, it's completely bog standard. Galvanized Savvy to get that multiplicative gun co, or whatever the sweats are talking about nowadays, Blaze, and Galvanized Acceleration to actually just turn this thing into the Plasmor. I could see Steflos maybe being an alternative to the Arcaplasmor for those who haven't unlocked Sisters yet, but I don't think it's worth the 6 months you have to spend at Tiana Pass farming it, to be honest. Going off the Vesper, AX52, and mods introduced in 1999, I had a feeling that weapons in this update were going to be themed around accuracy. The Reconifex isn't. That's not a bad thing, mind you. If anything, I'd say this weapon is the perfect complement to the Vesper, as well as Sight 9's neutralizer, in the form of pure, unrelenting Daka. An active reload mechanic helps offset this gun's glacial reload, and, if done right, imbues your entire magazine with extra heat damage and guaranteed status procs. This, plus Reconifex's huge magazine size, makes it an incredible crowd destroyer, letting you deal with hordes of enemies not through AoE or chaining beams, but just pure firepower. Build-wise, since we can forgo heat damage, I've been messing around with magnetic capacity to both add a secondary damage type and increase the amount of time we can play around with a heat-infused magazine. Yeah, no notes. Incredibly solid bullet hose weapon with a unique mechanic that not only gives it more damage, but negates its major downside of a long reload through proper timing and skill. Almost makes me feel better about fumbling Letty. The Grakata and its Prisma variant were once seen as actually a pretty decent option as far as primary weapons went. Nowadays, though, they're pretty unremarkable rifles with a monumentally low base damage, high fire rate, and one special extra feature.
Infinite ammo.
Brainstorm, the space is important, gives half a second of 100% ammo efficiency on a headshot, and that might seem like a tall order to perform on the firearm equivalent of drunkenly taking a piss at 3 AM, but at least one of the many bullets this gun lets loose is bound to be a headshot if you're even remotely on target. Wild Frenzy is another completely unhinged mod that allows you to dump an entire magazine with an increased fire rate, refunding your spent ammo if you manage to take down at least 2 enemies during the volley. You can see the connection here, right? Put these two on a weapon together with Wild Frenzy replacing your fire rate mod, and you can hip fire through an entire mission without letting up on the trigger once. Kinda like the AX52 if its hipfire was good. In the spirit of mixing things up a bit, since the Prisma Grakata has a pretty decent status chance for a high fire rate weapon, I decided to mod it for heat and magnetic damage via magnetic capacity instead of viral, since heat can stack infinitely with the absolute torrent of lead we're putting out. Even after many years, the Grakata still brings something unique to the table as a weapon that can easily fire infinitely. And sure, those bullets by themselves won't do much, but there's definitely something to be said for the quality of quantity. The Unreal Tournament skin takes this weapon up at least several tiers. The Ogris, not Ogress, settle down, is an otherwise unremarkable Grineer rocket launcher with a charge-based trigger, high status, innate blast damage, and minimal crit. What gives this weapon some actual sauce, though, is Nightwatch Napalm, an augment that makes the rockets create napalm patches. Huh. Well, Geneva Convention violations aside, this fire field deals pure heat damage based on your modified damage with a fixed status chance. This means that building for pure damage more so than pure status chance will cause these fire fields to have some actual kick to them. This makes a weapon that excels in locking down specific areas. Overall, another surprisingly solid 10-plus-year-old Gnir weapon, definitely becoming a bit of a trend here. The Purgator 1 is a 1999 weapon made popular by everyone's favorite breakout character, the Scaldra Decident. This is a weapon described as a slug launcher, so you might have expected it to use shotgun mods, you filthy Destiny 2 player. But it actually uses rifle mods, which works out for the weapon, as due to its unique passive, creating guaranteed gas explosions on kill, you can get a lot out of upfront damage mods like Primary Acuity. This creates an unassuming weapon that fires a single slow-moving slug directly into the forehead of a heavy enemy, before violently exploding them and anything standing nearby. The only real downside of this weapon is its limited ammo capacity, meaning you'll have to make every shot count. But with damage numbers like these, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Purgator 1 is a really solid weapon that simply got lost in the insane flood of other cool stuff that came out with Tech Red Encore. Not only is it viable, but it's unique, incentivizing a different building and playstyle than 90% of the other primaries in Warframe. Definitely worth at least a try to see if it's your jam. No, I mean, it's a great weapon, I just wasn't expecting the boombox that eats people to also shoot bugs and teleport. The Coda Bassocyst is one of the most potent weapons of the entire Tech Red Encore update. Taking the form of a shotgun that fires infinite punch-through projectiles instead of being an actual shotgun, this weapon can also use its alt-fire to launch several auto-tracking mites that deal damage over time and apply guaranteed magnetic and impact procs. Furthermore, alt-firing at an enemy vulnerable to mercy finishers will instantly teleport you to them in what I can only assume was a scrapped feature where the gun itself actually ate the enemy. Regardless, finishing an enemy this way gives the Bassocyst 20 seconds of plus 100% damage and multi-shot, so it's worth doing as often as possible. You can also use blood for ammo on your Parazon to just never have to worry about ammo or reloading again. Modding for this weapon is nothing unique, but since it is a Coda weapon, it comes with a progenitor damage bonus that would probably ideally be radiation, as it's a secondary damage type that doesn't mess with modding, and the alt-fire already produces magnetic procs. Now, I never really talk about weapon theming in these videos, but something I kinda got from the Bassocyst was that it almost had too much going on, you know? A boombox with sonic attacks that also launches tiny bugs that also is the only weapon in the entire game with Parazon synergy is like 2.5 weapons condensed into one. And the Bassocyst kind of feels at odds with itself at times because of that. But hey, this is starting to get out of scope for a weapon building short. From a purely mechanical standpoint, the Bassocyst is excellent and offers incredible performance. Everyone should have one. Full stop. Y'all mind if the white boy speaks a little Japanese tonight? A longbow of Tenno origin, the Daikyu acts as a heavy counterpart to its brothers in the lighter Cernos and the more rounded Paris. However, while those other two got prime versions and an Incarnon enhancement, the Daikyu decided to work on itself, adopted a constant sleep schedule, and started going to the gym more often, resulting in a stat rework that makes it hit with the approximate force of a semi-truck. This is balanced out by a base 1-second draw time that, unlike other bows, cannot be released early for a weaker but quicker shot. The Daikyu also has some unique mods. Spring-loaded Broadhead is part of a competition between two DE employees to see who can release the worst mod in the game without anyone noticing. And Amalgam Daikyu Target Acquired is one of only 2 mods in the game that can actually increase the overall headshot multiplier, so that's what we're building for. It also gives 3% lifesteal on Nikanas, just in case you were worried people only suspected you were a weeaboo for using this bow, and wanted to remove all doubt. This mod, combined with Primary Acuity, makes this weapon incredible at scoring one-shot headshots. But we can cook even harder. You see, Daikyu also was given an insane 46% base status chance, meaning that with only 2 dual stat mods, we can reach over 100 status chance, cross that base damage with a little bit of blast, and, well... So, yeah, Daikyu's really good, and performance like this only comes at the cost of— oh, Jesus! Okay, so it's a bit forma-hungry to get this thing online, but in exchange for basically having Ivara's concentrated arrow as a primary, I think it's a pretty worthwhile exchange. But, like, come on. Daikyu Prime when? Yeah, okay, enough modern weapons. I want to cover something old instead. The Tigris Prime used to be the go-to meta weapon in Warframe, due to some old shotgun code letting each pellet it fired cause guaranteed slash procs if modded properly. That got canned in 2020, however, and now, pellet status chances scale in a more similar fashion to other weapons. This left the Tigris and its variants in a weird spot. Despite having a frankly baffling base damage, a lack of any real status or crit chance, coupled with a small magazine and no AoE, led to it getting instantly shelved by most players, me included. But now, we live in a post-galvanized, post-arcane enhancement world. Furthermore, Tigris got its own unique mod, Combat Reload, which gives a massive reload speed bonus if 5 of the upwards of 30 pellets you'll be firing register as weak point hits. There's also Shotgun Vendetta, a mod that seems to be tailor-made for shotguns like the Tigris, giving multi-shot and reload speed on getting kills within 5 meters. Just good luck getting it from the circuit. The result is a good but funky weapon that can absolutely puke damage, but has a couple of quirks. The first being that in order to actually take advantage of your increased reload speed, you'll have to manually reload after emptying your 2-shot magazine. Otherwise, you'll spend a solid half second doing nothing before the auto reload starts. Second, Tigris's duplex trigger firing mechanism means that while you can technically fire as fast as you can click, you'll need to give chunkier enemies a quick moment to register the status procs you just hit them with. Otherwise, Galvanized Savvy won't actually register the statuses. Getting your timing right, however, will 2-shot even the heaviest of enemies. The Tigris has had a really interesting trajectory, from a meta powerhouse to basically MR fodder, and now sitting in a good spot as a very decent single-target primary. Overall, I guess I couldn't ask for a more super shotgun. Wow, deja vu, huh? Gonna be honest, when I made Ogris modding in a minute, I completely forgot that the Kuva Ogris was even a thing. Chalk it up to mental decline after reaching my mid-20s, I suppose. Being a lich weapon, the Kuva Ogris has better status and damage over its ordinary variant, along with an innate progenitor element. It can also still use Nightwatch Napalm, a unique mod that lets your rockets create patches of pure fire damage that scale based on a portion of your original shot's damage. But most importantly, the Kuva upgrade takes the Ogris from a charge weapon to a semi-automatic, which is a significant change. Please put the tomatoes away. Being a semi-automatic weapon means that the Kuva Ogris can use Semi-Rifle Cannonade, a damage mod that gives a 40% increase in damage, at the slight caveat of being unable to modify our fire rate, which isn't going to be a problem for a 3-shot rocket launcher. Modding-wise, I watched my old YouTube short about the base Ogris and copied my homework, except for the parts that were stupid. Here's my freak theory, alright? Since the zones from Nightwatch Napalm create guaranteed heat procs, but only scale on 30% of our base weapon's damage, building your Ogris for heat and status chance lets Heat Inherit do its thing and beef up your damage over time effects. This then leaves us with one last slot that I think Rifle Elementalist would be good for, but you could also add... What? Oh. You have to tell them. What? Who? No. No way. Say it. Yeah, buddy, how about you... Or you could add faction mods if that sharpens your katana or whatever. Yeah, I really like the Ogris. And the Kuva Ogris is just a better version. There are definitely better weapons for just pure burst AoE damage, but the existence of Nightwatch Napalm makes this weapon an all-time banger for me, even if mine dropped at a measly 25% damage bonus.